Welcome to InkThinks. Year after year for the last 2 decades, the same game pops up over and over as a contender for the best video game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Honestly, this isn't without merit. The sheer adventure and exploration and sense of wonder leaves an impact on a player as they travel to find the 7 sages and save Hyrule. Among those 7 sages, we find one of my favorite characters from the Legend of Zelda series, Impa. Impa has served as an advisor and guardian to Zelda and the Hyrule royal family for generations, and although she remains a background player most often, Impa appears in more Zelda games than any other non-Triforce wielding character. This begs the question, why do we have 3 Links, 2 Zeldas, and a character who's supposed to play like Ganondorf in Smash, but no mention of Impa within the roster? And, more importantly, what are her chances of getting in as DLC? I'm here with my friend, the Hyrule Gamer, to find out. I'm going to break down every single argument for and against Impa to determine her chances of getting into the game as DLC. Let's get into it. As I previously mentioned, Impa has been in a ton of Zelda games. She has main appearances in the original Legend of Zelda, Adventure of Link, Ocarina of Time, Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, Skyward Sword, Link Between Worlds, and Breath of the Wild. You can also find her in the Zelda Valiant comics, the Legend of Zelda Choose Your Own Adventure book Shadow Prince, Hyrule Warriors again, on the stained glass of Wind Waker, and finally in the Legend of Zelda game with the most impact to the lore, putting even Skyward Sword to shame, the Legend of Zelda Wand of Gamelon. Forgive my rambling, but if you feel like I just mentioned a majority of Zelda games out there, you wouldn't be too far off. Right now, there are 19 games in the main series, not counting remakes, and Impa finds herself in 8 out of those 19 games. Her sheer presence within the series is the biggest thing working in favor of Impa as far as I'm concerned, because while the Zelda series has a decent quantity of reps, the diversity is severely underwhelming. Let me explain what I mean. A point I hear brought up against Impa frequently is that there are already too many Zelda characters in Smash, and if Sakurai was going to add another one, he would have done it by now. There is a lot to unpack here, so let me start with the first argument about overrepresentation. I see 2 angles to approach this. The first is that of merit. Right now, Zelda has 6 representatives in Smash, but when we measure that up against the rest of the cast, we find 9 characters for Mario, and this is only if you count Donkey Kong, Wario, and Yoshi as separate franchises, 8 Fire Emblem fighters, 8 Pokemon fighters, and the most overrepresented of all, 8 Bowser Jr. fighters, although I guess there's no arguing about the merits of Bowser Jr. here. But anyway, if you compare it to the sales and cultural impact of the Legend of Zelda series to other series comparable in scale, the Legend of Zelda is actually a little bit underrepresented here. Apart from the Wii Sports franchise, The Legend of Zelda is the 3rd best-selling Nintendo series, with around 108 million sales, making it one of the top 25 best-selling series of all time. Compare the amount of fighters to Pokemon or Mario, and the difference in representation becomes clear. The second angle to approach this from takes us back to what I was saying about diversity in Zelda's representation. We have Young Link, Toon Link, and Adult Link. We have Zelda, and Zelda in Disguise, and then we have Ganondorf. When you reduce this to actual original characters, we still only have Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, just in different forms. For one of the best-selling series of all time, it seems like a criminal underrepresentation that there are so few characters in the game. And it isn't like there aren't a lot of characters to choose from. We can get what I'm looking at in one of my favorite games, the original Hyrule Warriors. Now, despite this game operating on an alternative canon than the official Legend of Zelda mainline games, Hyrule Warriors is consistently a showcase of some of the most accurate, faithful designs in all of Zelda. It includes not only my favorite design of Impa herself, but also a huge array of different characters that Smash could potentially pull from. Ruto, Darunia, Skull Kid, Tetra, Impa, and more are all interesting characters who make appearances within the game, and they all feel genuinely fun to play. Despite this being a great game that I love as a huge Zelda nerd, it also makes me a little sad to see this because it highlights the lack of representation that we've missed over the years in Smash. And that actually brings me up to another point. I've actually heard a lot of people say that even if Zelda has characters to pull from, Zelda has never been about the characters themselves, but more about the items. So adding items instead of characters would make more sense. Now, while I'm definitely in favor of adding more Zelda items to Smash, I feel like this argument represents a foundational misunderstanding of the Zelda series. Throughout The Legend of Zelda, we get a glimpse at what it looks like when a person loses hope. Whether it be a kingdom waiting for a hero that will never come, a king losing his people forever, or the cries of a child in way over her head as she loses all of her friends, family, and her whole country. The Legend of Zelda shows us the journey of people who lose everything, and in the face of immeasurable despair and sadness, find a way to triumph past that and find hope in the face of adversity. The reduction of the series as a display case for a bunch of cool items really doesn't do justice to the themes and messages conveyed by these relatively simple characters. Sure, there are a lot of items. In fact, there's a lot of really cool items, but those items are almost always used to enhance the quest, augment the wonder of puzzle solving, and enrich the experience rather than be the experience itself. Now, as I mentioned, some people argue that if Nintendo wanted to put another Zelda character into the game, they would have done so by now. While this argument may seem pretty on its face, it also falls prey to two of the most common logical fallacies in all debate, but especially within the Smash speculation scene. I'm going to break them down real fast so that you can not only spot them in the Impa arguments, but also work against them more effectively in your own Smash conversations. The first one is called hasty generalization. This is what happens when people jump to a conclusion with too little information. For example, someone might say, "I've never met anyone with red hair, therefore nobody has red hair." Or, more related to Smash, Sakurai has never added a character to Smash whose name begins with the letter Q, so he must really hate those characters. This one just doesn't hold up when put under the microscope. The second fallacy that this argument falls victim to is that of denying the antecedent. This happens when an argument is built off of a bad if-then statement. For example, if you say, "If it is a poodle, then it's a dog. It isn't a poodle, therefore it's not a dog." Essentially, it builds the argument off of a bad connection between the cause and effect. So when we apply that to Smash, we get, if Impa isn't in Smash, then Nintendo must never want to put another Zelda character into the game. Nintendo hasn't put Impa into Smash, therefore they must never want to put a Zelda character into the game. The entire argument is based on a false assumption that we don't have nearly enough information to back up, and we don't have information to say outright that Nintendo doesn't want a Zelda character in the game. Not to mention that we've seen series go a good while without representation, only to eventually get new characters, like King K. Rool for the Donkey Kong franchise. Another common argument I hear is that Impa would be too similar to Sheik, or that she isn't important enough to Zelda lore in general to get in because she doesn't wield a Triforce. To help me break this down, I'm going to turn the time over to my friend, the Hyrule Gamer, to give his thoughts on the matter. Take it away.
Hey folks, how's it going? I am the Hyrule Gamer, and being a huge Zelda fanatic, I have some thoughts on the matter of Impa's significance to the Zelda series, and what she could bring to the Smash Bros. Series. Now, I'm not a hardcore Smash player myself, but I do love handing out the occasional demolition when challenged. Be warned. The Smash Bros. Series is made up of a diverse cast of brawlers, the old and new of Nintendo, the cult favourites, and even some non-Nintendo fighters. And within the always growing amazing roster, I think a potential new fighter could be Impa from The Legend of Zelda. Impa is a very important figure in the Zelda universe. Whilst not always the focal point of games, she often plays a huge role in the background, most notably her significance in the era of the Wild, both pre-Calamity and post-Calamity. The wise Sheikah Elder leads the Sheikah tribe, the arguably most intelligent group in all of Zelda. Impa is at the helm of all of that. She often appears as an old lady, but we recently saw her in her younger stage, and this has brought up the idea of having her in Smash. Now, you might be thinking, we already have Sheik. What would Impa bring to the table that's actually different? Well, I'm glad you asked. Unlike Sheik, Impa could bring a more modern representation of the Sheikah from The Legend of Zelda. Sheik is old school Sheikah. She fights like a ninja, traditional combat techniques used with pace and precision, which is by all means really cool, but Impa could bring something new. Impa is the new in-fashion Sheikah member. We've seen a lot of her in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which has inspired me to suggest how she could play differently. Due to Impa being a modern day Sheikah, she would have the ability to utilize Sheikah technology. Bomb ruins, stasis to freeze her opponents in time, and her more natural abilities such as teleportation and agility. I'm not particularly sure on an exact moveset, but having a few Sheikah technology attacks, teleportation strikes, and making her extremely agile would really help to set her apart from Sheik. I think this is something that's definitely possible, and I'd really love to see Impa appear in the Smash series. Thanks a lot for listening to my thoughts on this, and big thanks to Ink for having me on. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thanks for that. Like Hyrule Gamer said, there is certainly a lot to Impa that isn't heavily broadcasted into the Zelda universe, but she's often there in the background. In every incarnation, she's provided valuable insights and advice to Link. You can see her lead a generation of people in Breath of the Wild. This tribe of Sheikah played a pivotal role to Link's efforts to defeat Calamity Ganon. One of my favorite incarnations of Impa is that of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, or as I like to call it, 38.5 hours of Impa being an absolute legend who saves Zelda over and over. Seriously, she comes through for Zelda more often than Link here. If you want to go through with this more traditional version of Impa, there is no shortage of stuff to pull from, especially when taking her magic and martial prowess into account. But right now, the most talked about incarnation of the character is her Age of Calamity appearance. The game definitely took a unique approach to the character in terms of her design and moveset, but like Hyrule Gamer said, she represents a new age of Sheikah. While OG Impa is either a wise old lady or a martial protector, this version of Impa is a younger one who utilizes magic, teleportation, and modern Sheikah technology to wreak havoc on anyone who would get in the way of either her or the princess. Being totally honest, this version of the character took me a good minute to warm up to, but she is seriously awesome. Between the shadow clones, agile knife strikes, and Sheikah tech, she's definitely already made a name for herself and has proven to be a capable fighter and an early fan favorite. That said, one of the arguments against this is that Age of Calamity is too new for this version of Impa to be in, to which I have 2 points. Even if it is too early for this version of Impa to be in, Impa has been around since the very first Legend of Zelda game, and she's had plenty of time to be developed in any of her other incarnations. That said, as far as timing for this version goes, it's hard to say. I've seen a lot of people who have been citing Steve's negotiation time of 5 years as a standard for DLC characters. But to me, this sounds like more of that hasty generalization fallacy to assume that every character in the DLC pack will take this amount of time. When it comes to Age of Calamity itself, it's possible that the development of the game could coincide with Sakurai's development of the character. I mean, Byleth was developed in Smash concurrently to his own game. Greninja was also being developed for Smash before Pokemon X and Y were even finished. And it's been speculated that Sakurai worked mostly off of concept art for his moves, so it's entirely possible that Impa could fit this same kind of schedule. It also could potentially make sense that Impa hasn't been added to Smash so far because they were waiting for a new, more modern version of the character to include in the game. There isn't much to back that up really, but it has seemed really odd to me that Impa isn't in the game yet, and that could be a possible reason, but like I said, that one's kind of shaky. With Age of Calamity coming out November 20th, it would make a lot of sense for this to finally be the time to get Impa into Smash Bros. That said, I'm always a little bit skeptical that Nintendo will line up their characters with gaming events or game releases. This was a pitfall that a lot of Crash fans fell into with Crash 4 being released. Sometimes Nintendo will line things up and sometimes they don't. There isn't enough of a pattern to say definitively that they will do this or definitively that they won't this time around. Impa is and has been my most wanted character in Smash by a large margin. While she does definitely easily deserve her spot on the roster, it's really difficult to say if there's enough that sets her apart from the other DLC options. She does have some stuff working in her favor, and not really a ton against her. The biggest issue is whether or not she can differentiate herself from the other DLC candidates to be chosen by Nintendo and included in the game herself. Normally, with the merits that she has, I'd rate her chances around 5 out of 10 in likelihood. But given that Age of Calamity does come out soon, and that Breath of the Wild 2 is in the works, it seems like Zelda is going to be under the limelight again for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and bump her total likelihood rating to a 6 out of 10. Before I close off, I need you all to let me know in the comments, which design of Impa do you prefer? The original Hyrule Warriors design or the Age of Calamity design? Or are you old school and like the old lady design? I think I'm slightly in favor of the original Hyrule Warriors design. If you liked this video, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you want to see when I post. If you actually want to see when I post, hit the bell. Check out Hyrule Gamer by clicking the video on the left. There are a lot of Zelda tubers out there, but he's definitely one of the best and holds his own against channels far larger than his own. Click the video on the top right to see something that YouTube picked just for you, or click the playlist in the lower right hand corner to binge my entire final analysis series. Use the link in the description to come talk to me on Discord. Stay smashing.